Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and I'm here to... Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland. And this week I'm going to be diving into Stanley Kubrick's Paths of Glory. And this is a film that I actually talked about on the Movie Club on Development Hell podcast. So if you really want to hear a variety of perspectives on this film from myself, Matt, Alex, Jim, and Vinny, go check that episode out. But now I'm going to really just obviously talk about my thoughts because I'm the only one here. But, you know, with the show, we go with our coming attractions, our feature film, and then some recommendations. And we're going to start off with our coming attractions, which there could only be one. Black Widow, July 9th. I have been waiting so long for a new Marvel movie. Like, the shows are great, but, like, I want to sit in a theater and just take in a Marvel movie because it's been way too long. And I just love the MCU so much. All of them are, like, right around there behind me. And I'm all in on these characters. Was I super excited to find out they were doing, like, a prequel series? Like, this series takes place in between Civil War and Infinity War. I'm like, fine, whatever. I'm happy to see Scarlett Johansson getting her own film and seeing Black Widow getting her own film because I do really think she's great and she deserves it. Like, when she finally got a big spotlight in Winter Soldier and kind of had, like, a co-lead, honestly, with Captain America, like, I thought that was great. And I'm excited to see what they do here. They're introducing her whole family with Florence Pugh playing Yelena, who's her sister, and David Harbour, a.k.a. Red Guardian, the Russian Captain America, and Rachel Weisz. And I'm looking forward to seeing that family dynamic. And then you have Taskmaster, who seems to be like a cool fighting villain. I don't know how much depth they're going to have with this villain. Ray Winstone's in it. I'm just excited to see this, and I've heard a lot of things that it's in the same vein of like action thriller like Winter Soldier. I'm down for that. And you have Kate Shortland, who I don't really have a whole lot of familiarity with her work, and then Jack Schaefer, who wrote WandaVision, wrote this. So, like, I'm going to see it. There's only one movie that I cared about that much coming out the 9th, and it's this. I'm excited. I want to see Black Widow, and ready for Shang-Chi. I'm ready for Eternals, Spider-Man, No Way Home, Multiverse of Madness, Love and Thunder, the Marvels, Wakanda Forever, all of them. So, I love MCU, and I love Marvel movies. So, yeah, I'm ready for Black Widow. But now for something completely different, because let's be real here, the MCU is not a Kubrick film. So we're going to shift gears now into talking about Stanley Kubrick's Paths of Glory. And to be perfectly honest, this I feel like is the film where Kubrick's really coming into, like, Kubrick films. Because, like, I really love The Killing. I watched Fear and Desire and Killer's Kiss for the first time. And there's a lot to love about those films. But this is really that first film where it's just, like, Kubrick. It feels like a Kubrick. And this film is, like, an hour and a half war film, anti-war film, that focuses on this colonel played by Kirk Douglas, who has to stand up for 3 of his men who are being put on trial for cowardice because his unit didn't run out into no man's land to just get murdered. And it's like, they were going to get slaughtered, and now they're up for cowardice, and this film really takes a deep dive into the ideas of war, and what goes into war, and the spoils of war, and the cost of war, and all of these different kinds of things, and it's very much Kubrick. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of thought in terms of faith, and commentary on war, and politics, and the absurdity of war, because that's the biggest thing here, and this film does such a great job of looking at that. It's a beautiful, crisp, black and white, as most of his early films are. It's beautifully shot. The film just is a wonder to look at. You have George Krause, who was the cinematographer, and Gerald Fried, who did the score, which is very much like a military-esque kind of score, which goes a very interesting way in helping build the tone here, because it feels very military, except this film is very military, but in actuality is very anti-war, and how it portrays all of that information, and how that music's a juxtaposition here. And it really works. And just hitting on some of the main points here, when they show the trenches and the camera just going down these trenches or tracking backwards through the trenches, and you just have Kirk Douglas walking through, and like people are dead or shell-shocked and just all out of it everywhere. It's so beautifully shot and incredibly rendered. You really get that feeling, the claustrophobia of being in the trenches, the horrible things going on. There's this horrible moment where this man is very obviously shell-shocked, and it keeps cutting back of like him just being framed and just losing it. And the way that the one general played by George McReady just is so despicable about it and hitting him, and it felt right out of the film Patton, like years before Patton. And it really captures that energy of like not understanding what PTSD was, and just calling people cowards. And it's a hard scene to watch. And of course, all the trench scenes are very hard to watch. You have this one scene of these men going out late at night into no man's land, and one of them has an unbelievably unfortunate fate, and it's terrible. And how the camera portrays what happens to him is really shocking, and it really paints a picture of the different mindsets. One of them just like runs away and tries to be like, no, I was going back to do yada yada. It's like that cowardice and that confrontation of these different people trying to run away from this horrible thing that they're caught up in. You have the battle sequence, which amazing tracking camera going on with this big field full of people. If you look too close, you're going to find some extras that don't exactly do what they're supposed to do, but it's beautifully rendered and amazing for a film from 1957. You see Kirk Douglas leading the way out into the charge, and just like cannon fire and shooting and people dropping dead, and just the debris, the disgustingness. Obviously, this is like decades before 1917, but you really feel that, and it's pretty incredible. And then you have Kirk Douglas at the center here, who is an amazing presence. Like, man looks like chiseled out of stone, just like that dimpled chin and everything, and he is a rebel here. He wants to stand up for his men against this horrible atrocity. It's like, you want to put my whole entire squadron on trial? It's like, oh no, let's do 3 people. That's fine, right? We could put 3 to death, and that'll send a message. And his juxtaposition with Adolphe Menjot's General Brillard is just so incredible, because Brillard's just so matter of fact about it. Be a gentleman about it. Oh, 3's not too bad. We could just kill 3 of them. And it's like, oh, you get to have this. And there's this one moment later in the film when Kirk Douglas finally lashes out at this general, and it's so great. And the fire that Douglas brings, he is electric, and he brings all of that acting right out in that moment, and it's so impactful. And that's one of my favorite moments in this film, is when Douglas really gets to like sink his teeth into it, and you can tell like that camera is like loving the energy coming off of him. It's just like drawing it out of him, and Kubrick captures it so well. And you have McReady, who I mentioned earlier, who's despicable. His character's horrible. This General Miro, and he has this like scar on his face, and just the three of them going back and forth, like really pulling in that political thoughts, like the different aspects and perspectives on war. And like one of them just like so high up there, like the mile high level, that you can't even tell like the little ants below you and the significance of their lives. And then you have Douglas and McCready going head to head in terms of those things. It's such an impactful film and so much to say. You have this monkey trial. It's just ridiculous, and they know what they were going to do. No matter what these men said, they were going to be put to death. And you have these three men, each representing different ways of dealing with things. And a shout out to Joe Turkel, who is also in, he's Tyrell in Blade Runner, and he's in, he's the bartender in The Shining, and his character just like lashes out this emotional response to things, and something horrible happens to him, and it just shows the absurdity of this whole entire situation. But if you dig deep into each of those three characters, and one dealing with their faith in trying to deal with this situation and coming to grips with it, and how the others deal with it, there's so much depth in this film and so much to say in terms of humanity and how we deal with adversity. And that's why this works so well. And then you have the firing squad at the end. You have one of these men just like breaking down, crying, and it's hard to watch this emotional moment. And one of them literally, like, he's gonna die anyway, and they literally strap him to a board just so they could get shot, and just so they could prove a point. And that just echoes so much. And you get these moments, like I mentioned before, of Kirk Douglas standing up at the end. And one of the most surprisingly poignant endings I've seen in a film in a long time, having watched this twice this year, once back in January and once now, of him taking, like, looking at these group of American, like well, they're not Americans, the group of soldiers, the French soldiers at this bar, and this young, petite German woman comes up. She starts singing in German. And then they all start melting, and just like their humanity comes back, and they all start singing along with her. And it's such a poignant human moment that shows like we're all the same. We're all people. No matter who's telling you what, who's telling you this, and what side you're supposedly on. And that song just brings out such emotion, and Douglas is observing this and bringing out the humanity in everybody, because like this is World War I. This isn't like the Nazis trying to exterminate so many different kinds of people. This is about a bunch of rich royalty who are all related, who are all just like, oh, you shot my cousin. Oh, we're going to shoot you. Oh, you shot my friend. I'm going to shoot you. And then just all this nonsense and BS. And this film captures that so well, because why did World War I happen? Why did millions of people die? For what? Nothing. And the absurdity of it, the nonsense of it, Kubrick is able to capture all of that so perfectly well in this film, and it's really impactful. And you see that in things like Barry Lyndon. You see that in Dr. Strangelove, which I'm so looking forward to taking a deep dive into. It's just all the absurdity and the craziness of the world in war, all in this film, and Kubrick just nails it. And this is such a great film, and I'm so glad that I've watched it twice recently, because it's a really impactful and amazingly put together film. The script, the dialogue, the themes, the ideas are great. The filmmaking is impeccable, and Kubrick's like, I felt like this is his big coming out party, because like this is like next level, and you stay up there from here. We're gonna get Spartacus in all of its 3 hours and 20-minute glory. We're going to get Lolita and Dr. Strangelove and 2001: A Space Odyssey. And might as well just say them all. Clockwork Orange, Barry Lyndon, The Shining, Full Metal Jacket, and Eyes Wide Shut. This is that launching off point where he really becomes the director that Kubrick becomes, and you see that here. And like Spartacus is his most mainstream studio film, but like between this and then hitting back in with Lolita, this is Kubrick being Kubrick, and he does a great job in this film. So if you haven't seen Paths of Glory, go check this one out. Now on to the recommendations for this week. So I have one film that was on my watch list that I got to check out, and one film that was a new film that I really want to talk about. So we have directed, written, and starring Bruce Lee, The Way of the Dragon. And so this is a film taking place in Italy, and Lee plays this man who visits his relatives and gets caught up in like this mafia situation, trying to strong arm them. Most of the film is not like really engrossing drama or particularly interesting, but when there's action, it's amazing. And let's be real here, the reason you watch The Way of the Dragon is to watch that fight between Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris. You get that in this film. Chuck Norris with his mutton chops and his long hair and his ridiculously hairy body when he takes his shirt off. And that fight between the two of them is next level action in film, and it's off the charts. These are two men in real life who could do all these things, who are masters of their martial arts and go to town. And like that sequence at the end of the film in like the Coliseum is 100% worth checking this film out. And you know, you have some other fun along the way, and Bruce Lee's like a tentative kind of character here, but like he's still charismatic. He owns it when he's fighting, and I enjoyed the aspects that were why you watched this film in the first place, which is the fighting. So I was really close to talking about my recommendation being No Sudden Move, Steven Soderbergh's new film that's on HBO Max. Something I watched even was better than that. So I'm going to talk about that, but go check out No Sudden Move because that's a great film. I'm going to talk about Summer of Soul, or When the Revolution Could Not Be Televised. And this is the Harlem Cultural Festival from 1969, taking place around the same time as Woodstock. But Woodstock became this huge thing, and this was a cultural event of Black African American culture in America. And this film from Questlove, who directed this documentary, paints such a great picture of culture and the societal implications and importance of this concert and of Black culture. And also an amazing concert. I love soul, jazz, Motown, 70s R&B. All of that and 60s speaks to me so well, and getting a chance to watch Sly and the Family Stone and Gladys Knight and the Pips and Stevie Wonder and B.B. King and Nina Simone and so many others perform The Fifth Dimension. I lost my shit when they started playing Age of Aquarius and Let the Sun Shine In. Like, I had a blast watching this. When Sly came out, that was so great. And there's so much energy and depth to this documentary, and understanding the importance of it, along with amazing music. If you haven't gotten a chance to check out Summer of Soul either in theaters or on Hulu, go check this film out. It is so worth it. But those are my recommendations for this week. And Paths of Glory was our feature, and Black Widow was our coming attraction. And that is another week here on Welcome to the Wasteland. I'm hoping you're enjoying this trek through all of Kubrick's films. Next week we're going to be jumping into Spartacus, which is going to be quite the handful at 3 hours and 20 minutes. So that video might be a little bit longer. But in terms of this, I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about these different films. I'm sure millions of others will be checking out Black Widow. And if you haven't seen Paths of Glory, check it out. And go show Summer of Soul some love. And go seek out Way of the Dragon if you want to enjoy some martial arts movies. But those are my thoughts on all these films. But the most important thing is I appreciate all of you out there for tuning in and always supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.